This is Brian Young, Super Bowl champ, 49er. You're listening to Matt and Dexter on The Grueling Truth.
Welcome to another 49er edition of The Grueling Truth, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, a new interactive football app that lets you call the plays by the offense or the defense in a live NFL game and compare results around the country what other people are picking. Check it out at www.gridironmo.com. As always, I'm your host for the 49er Weekly Show, Matt Andruscavage, and I'd like to welcome in my co-host, former 49er running back, Dexter Carter. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good, Matt. Hey, it's great to be back with you after weeks.
Yeah, we both had some life events happening in our lives and had taken a little few-week break, but we are definitely back. Looking forward to discussing 49ers. Basically, we're going to discuss the last few weeks of the Blaine Gabbert era. You know, Colin Kaepernick's last start was against the Rams, and afterwards he was benched for Blaine Gabbert. He did make one attempt in the Atlanta game, but after that he was put on injured reserve with his shoulder injury, and Blaine Gabbert has taken every snap under center since. And so Blaine Gabbert's record as a starter is 2-2. They've basically been competitive in all four games. The worst loss was the 14-point loss at Seattle. But otherwise, all four games have been relatively competitive, and three of them were really close games.
Yeah, and what I've seen Blaine during this period he's been the starter is I see a guy taking advantage of his opportunity. And even though you know when a new quarterback takes over, the offensive playbook is not as open to him just because to it yet. But the playbook, what I've seen over the last few weeks is it's opened up a little bit more each time, and he's doing a great job with what's being put in front of him and what he's been able to accomplish. I think he actually, based on skill set, he actually makes the offensive line look a little bit better in their development. Now, they've gotten better, in my opinion, but he's taken advantage of his opportunity in the pocket, and he's stepping up, and he's getting outside the pocket with his first option still being to throw the ball. And he's done a good job throwing the ball down the field and running when he has opportunity to. So he is a guy that I think has a great skill set, like he had evaluated coming out of college, and actually looking the part right now.
Yeah, you know, Blaine Gabbert had definitely a rough tenure in Jacksonville, as you know. Living in Jacksonville, you probably got to see a lot of him. And, you know, he was kind of thrown into the fire right away. And it wasn't, you know, he's put on a very, very poor Jacksonville team and asked basically to go out there and make something happen. And, you know, that doesn't bode well a lot for young quarterbacks. But like you said, he's taking advantage of his opportunity, and he does have the skill set. He's got very good speed. Overall, you just wouldn't think it by looking at him. He's a big guy, and he's got a good arm, and overall he's relatively accurate. You know, there's times where maybe he's not, but you're not going to complete everything. But overall, like you said, he's taking advantage of the opportunities given to him.
As I said, too, look very, very athletic. And one thing that we talked about, you know, before Cap, you know, was taken out of the lineup, you know, is that they should go downfield more. You know, and I believe it was the last I saw game winner touchdown to Torrey Smith, and those are the type of opportunities. And Blaine feels he's got nothing to lose, and he's just slinging it down the field and given the opportunities such as that to make plays. And the particular one against Chicago was a game winner. So if they stay adding to the playbook, not overwhelming him, I think he's going to continue to have the success he's had. He's looking very calm back there in the pocket, very confident, and just, as I said, he's where people are, and he's getting the ball to the guys in a position to make plays.
Exactly. You know, you look at him, you watch him back there. His pocket presence is good. He looks comfortable. He's, they are, like you said, the offensive line has also improved. They finally benched Jordan Devey, and they made Andrew Tiller the full-time right guard, and I think that's really made a lot of difference. They got Daniel Kilgore back now. Now, he hasn't played up to now, but they're getting better play out of the offensive line. It's not this it's not a bloodbath like it's been all year. So it's been good to see that. And, you know, other guys have stepped up, especially on defense as well. It's like, you know, one of the things that we wanted to see was, okay, the season is pretty much over. They're almost surely not going to make the playoffs, but how's the team going to respond? Are they going to just lay down trying to get a high draft pick, or are they going to go out and play hard? And I think we've seen the latter.
Right. What I'm seeing is the only draft picks this team is worrying about right now, for sure, are the ones that they got for Vernon Davis in the trade with the Broncos. But this team has come out, and whether it's inspired play from Blaine Gabbert or the entire staff in general, is that they've come out and they're playing with a zest, with wanting to have the best season that they can. Because before the loss to Chicago, they beat Chicago, but before they had a key loss in 2 out of the 4 games that they recently had, they were still in the hunt. Yeah, they were still in the hunt for the playoffs. You know, so what I'm seeing is they're worrying about positioning themselves from a confidence perspective going into the off season, because they've got a great group of young talent that even on the offensive line, you see some improvement, whether it's because Blaine Gabbert has inspired this team, this offense, or it's whether the way he's playing. You know, he's throwing the ball well, he's running the ball well. You know, he's a pass first, run second, and running very well whenever the run is called upon. I love the way he steps up in the pocket, and he still gets outside the pocket, when needed to protect his offensive line, but he still is looking to throw first and run second. So everybody, to me, seems like they are trying to make the best that they can out of the remaining part of this here season. So it makes me optimistic on where the 49ers are with their young talent, because you see the development of these corners, you see the safeties playing well, and the linebackers were already, projected to play well, and they are playing well this season. And offensively, I just see an improvement just because I believe, the inspired play of Gabbert is making the offensive line look better, and the receivers, when they're called upon, they're making plays. So, and that was quite evident, in the touchdown, to win the game against Chicago. It was a play made by Gabbert, and Torrey Smith just made a play. So this team needs to continue doing what they're doing and have the best season that they can, and let the draft picks fall where they may.
Exactly. Going forward, it's definitely encouraging that, the Niners are down to like their 5th running back, and they're getting production out of them. Vernon Davis had been a star for the Niners for a long time. I mean, he had, there has been some inconsistencies, especially over the last 2 years, but, he was really relied upon as being a top receiver for a long time. They ended up trading him, moving on from him. We've already talked about how that was probably the right move. Got a couple draft picks for him. But now look at the young guys coming up. Garrett Selleck looks good. Vance McDonald all of a sudden is playing well. He had 2 good games against Arizona and Seattle. And then the rookie, Blake Bell, he looks really good. He had a nice game against Arizona before the Chicago game. And it's nice to see some of these young guys being able to step up and make the most of their opportunities. And going forward, there's really not a lot on places on this roster that I feel uncomfortable about going into next year. Obviously, we want to see continued development and maybe a couple more draft picks to shore up a couple of areas, but it doesn't look like that this team has just so many deficiencies that they can't make a run at the playoffs.
And that's right. As you said, there's a great group or a good group of young talent there at tight end that's getting their opportunity now and begin to shine. And running back, I think the talent at running back, we're not concerned about the talent in that position is keeping it healthy, because we've got the right people in the right place. Now, what has been a pleasant surprise to me is when you bring a man off the street in Drawn, and, he's not a Pro Bowl player, but his production, as you stated earlier, he's averaging about, just a little over 100 yards all-purpose, getting some good quality receptions in, and about 60 yards rushing a game. But you know what? He's a consistent player that's going to be where he needs to be, and he's going to, and turnovers are not an issue with him. So, you know what? He's holding it down there, and he's a first through third down guy, and he's been, doing well. So he just needs to be consistent in what he's doing, stay, doing those things, and let Gabbert, control that offense. So I've been pleasantly surprised with the guys that we've lost at the running back position, and having Drawn come in and perform the way he has.
Well, that's just it. Drawn is he's been around a lot of teams, including Cleveland, who they play this week. And for him to just come off the street, he's averaging close to 50 yards rushing and close to 50 yards receiving. And, for a guy who's essentially a fifth-string running back to come in and be pretty consistent. I mean, the guy's getting 5 or 6 catches a game. He picks up the blitz very well. He hits the hole good. He can get around the end. He just seems to do everything well. And, he looks to be a very valuable number 2 back going into next year, assuming Carlos Hyde comes back healthy. And it's very encouraging going forward.
Yes, his performance is definitely saying a lot for going into the off season, and saying that he wants to be a part of this team and being included in their training camp with the opportunity to fight for that second position. Who knows what's going to, what there's going to be with Bush. If Bush is healthy, I think Bush is still a quality back. And so we've got the talent needed at that position to succeed in the future if we just keep it healthy. But going into this game against Cleveland, it should be an inspired game, for a few people. Drawn, who used to play, there, that, probably feels that they should have kept him. Our defensive coordinator, who was the head coach there, and then, former safety, that's playing with Cleveland now, that used to play, so there's a lot. Yeah, so there's a lot of guys that I'm sure are going to be playing inspired. 2 for us, 1 for them. So hopefully that would mean more positive and hopefully a win for us, since we've got more former players, that used to be with them that's playing for us now. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, talking about the Cleveland game, Cleveland is not very good. So it's not like the Niners are going into this thing, against an overmatched opponent. The Browns are, they're the Browns. Johnny Manziel's going to be playing. If you get him outside the pocket, and the last thing you want to do is play man coverage on him, because he can put up yards. There were a couple times where he played pretty good. There were times in the Bengals game earlier in the season that he played all right, and then he put up like 300 yards against the Steelers. He can make plays, but overall, the Niners have a defense that should be able to win this game. This is a very winnable game. And, the defense, what I really like about the Niners defense is, first of all, Navarro Bowman, it's unfortunate that he's playing on a team that's under 500. Otherwise, he would really have a shot at comeback player of the year. Because he's really playing good, especially after all the negative chatter about him early in the season. He's playing good. Aaron Lynch still looks very good. I don't know if he's going to play because of the concussion, but they're getting a lot of productivity out of these young guys, and I like what I see out of Eric Armstead. Jimmy Ward last week had a pick 6, and we're just seeing more and more of these young guys stepping up and getting the most out of their opportunities. And so I look for that to continue against Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, the young talent, I don't see why they won't continue to develop. But about Bowman, if in all fairness, regardless of what the 49ers record is, and I suspect they'll go and they'll beat Cleveland this week, and then they'll surely be competitive, with the remainder remaining schedule that they've got. But I think if the comeback player of the year is judged based on what it should be, which is how did that player come back and perform individually. I believe he should get comeback player of the year. I don't know who else in the league. Adrian Peterson came back last year from his ACL, so he's not a comeback player of the year, if I'm correct about that. I think,
I know there's at least one or two guys, but go ahead.
Yeah. I still think, he should be in the top 2 or 3. And if he wins it, I don't think anybody would complain just because of his productivity and his stats, prove that he should definitely have a chance to be in the running for that.
Most definitely. You look at him out there, he's the leader of this defense. Going forward, he's still a young guy, and relatively, and they can build around him. They can build around him, Eric Reed, Aaron Lynch, and Antoine Bethea. There's enough talent on this defense, not just to be competitive this year with, like you said, the remaining schedule, which is like Detroit, St. Louis. They will have a tough game against Cincinnati, but 3 of those 4 are very winnable games, and there's no reason that they can't look competitive. But going forward into next year, I really look at a lot of optimism that these guys are going to be able to come out and elevate their performance. Hopefully they can bring in a couple of guys to further shore up the defense. But, there's just no reason to sit and go that the sky is falling, because this defense does look pretty good overall.
Yeah, and off seasons are so important. So they will show up the areas that they need to show up. But more than anything, I think, getting the guys that are injured back, because you got, Reed, they're at safety. And I think getting those young guys at the cornerback position, the experience that is so important right now, because you got guys that should have been backups. So now when the starters come back, you've got, your nickel back, and you've got, a reserve, so you've got 5 corners that are going to be, very, very competitive, that have experience from this season. So it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be awesome for the team to go continue playing the rest of the season, and then go into the off season with a lot of confidence in the young talent that they've compiled.
Yep, I agree with that. I know that there has been chatter early in the season. There's definitely some chatter that the Niners will probably have a really rough season, and then because of the schedule at the end of the year, they might look better than they really are, and it creates false hope. And I don't see it that way. I really see I see it as a confidence builder for the team. I think there probably has been some guys from last year, and maybe even 1 or 2 this year, who won't be back, and it might be a good thing. A couple of guys that, there has been some locker room turmoil, but a lot of that's gone. Next year we're going to see an off-season, finally an off-season where we won't have to see anything about an Alden Smith arrest. I like Alden Smith. I wish everything had worked out better, and I wish him the best in Oakland, but the last thing this team needs now are a bunch of distractions. And I'm really hopeful that this off-season, building on some success to the end of this season and going into the off-season, that there won't be these distractions that we've had these last few years. And so I'm looking forward to a lot of potential and a continual building of this young team.
I agree with that. And also pertaining to the false hopes, I don't believe that winning creates any false hope, because when you go out and you play 60 minutes, an entire 60 minutes against another team that is equally prepared, for the game as you have, a lot of plays can change the direction of that game. But if they win games, those are valid games that should bode well for their confidence, going to the next game and going into the off season. So I think right now they have a big reason, or a real reason, to be confident in what they are doing. So as long as they stay healthy, I think they're going to continue to see success. Even, unfortunately, in the losses, because, hey, sometimes you're going to lose just because the other team is better, and you're still developing as a team. So I think they're going to be all right as long as they stay healthy.
Absolutely. Going forward, the last part of the show, I'm going to raise up a couple of the concerns that I've read, and I'm going to ask you what you think about them. The first question basically would be, got a couple of free agents. There's a guy like one of them, Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden has been one of the cornerstone pieces of the team since he came here in 2013. He's approaching he's pretty much in his mid-30s now. Should the Niners bring him back, especially if they could get him back at a reduced rate?
If you have a receiver that is as accomplished as Anquan Bolden is, at his age, he's still physically in great condition. Then you have a player who is, in the community the way that he is. You don't see any off-the-field distractions. And I believe he's the 49ers Walter Payton nominated Player of the Year.
Yes, he is.
And as you said, the key thing is it can't be that much of a discount, but a discount nonetheless. And it depends on what you have replacing him. In my opinion, when you have a young man like that can teach younger players how to be a professional, you don't get rid of them. You try to work it out from a salary perspective, and hopefully they will work that out. But he's a player that I would definitely bring back.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It might be a lot if he continues to ask for the $6 million a year that he's been getting, but I agree. The guy's such a good locker room presence. He's such a great mentor for younger receivers. He does so much off the field, so much great charity work with his Q Foundation, and he's a guy that I'd like to see back at least one more year as well. So I'm in agreement on that. So the second question is, we talked about Anquan Bolden. What do you think about bringing 40-year-old kicker Phil Dawson back? He's been a rock. He's been very good this year and last year. He is over 40 now. Should the Niners bring him back or look to replace him with a younger player?
Well, I think we talked about the draft earlier, so I think, one, you should look to get a kicker in the draft. And you don't have to get a kicker in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds. You can find a good kicker, anywhere in the draft or even free agency. So I think if you have difficulty finding a kicker or bringing one in, then you can bring Dawson in for the right price. He's been a rock. That he's solid. So there's the possibility to bring him back. At 40 years old, you have to weigh the option. Will someone else pick him up at that age, or can we wait to the draft and see where we're at and then, reach out and bring him back in if we have to? So, that's one of those things where you've got a solid guy. He's 40, but he's kicking the ball well. The way I look at it is I know Janikowski over across the bay is not 40 years old, but Janikowski is going to kick for a long time. And, I'm not comparing Dawson to Janikowski, but if you like the kicker that you have and it's financially feasible, then you find a way to bring that kicker back in until you find a quality back kicker to replace him. So to answer that question, I would have to say find a young kicker. If you can't find that young kicker in the draft or free agency, then you have to look at the option to bring Dawson back for the right price.
I agree. I think I think Dawson deserves at least some consideration, but obviously once you hit 40, you probably got to start looking around at least at bringing in some younger blood. The last question is probably the most controversial. raises, probably stirs a lot of emotions one way or another in Niner fans. And I guess it's, what should the Niners do with Colin Kaepernick? Blaine Gabbert is playing pretty good. He's going to have Colin will have like a $12 million guaranteed contract for next year if he's on the roster by, I believe, April. And, it's one of those things where, I remember the good days. I don't think he's this terrible player that some people think, especially people outside of the Niners organization. And, it's one of those things where, well, Gabbert's going to be a much cheaper option. He is playing good. Should the Niners just look at the draft or, possibly bring him back for another year?
Well, I wouldn't have said this at the beginning of the year, but now you're looking at the type of year that Kaepernick was having. Now, a lot of things can contribute to that, which is the offensive scheme that he was in, him losing his quarterback, coach that was the head coach that knew how to mold him and use his skills. But putting that aside, we have to see what Cap was doing and how he was performing, when he lost his job. And then you have to look at the $100+ million. You have to look at the $12 million guaranteed money that he's going to get if he's on the roster after a certain point. Then you look at Gabbert, who is in his 5th year, so he's still relatively young, was highly toned coming out, and has found that whatever it was that he lost in Jacksonville, he's found it. He is a well-balanced quarterback that can run and throw first, run second, but very, very athletic, has gained the confidence in this team around him, has gained his confidence, the coach's confidence in him. So you got 2 young quarterbacks, and one have fallen by the wayside and, had the surgery, and one that's healthy and playing very, very well right now and giving your organization something to be excited about, look forward to. So in this type of situation, be it my decision or not, I think, one, you paid him that money. If you're going to use him the same way you used him before, don't bring him back because you're going to get the same player. Gabbert performs well at this point better than Kaepernick is playing in that same role. So it comes down to dollars and cents. $12 million is a lot of money. They created a contract that was team heavy, that was very favorable towards the team. It was said at that point. So it wasn't done favorably to Cap. So if the team needs to get rid of him, they're not going to pay a heavy debt for doing that. So if I could look in a crystal ball, I would say that Cap's going to heal up from his surgery, and then they're going to release him, let him go to another team before he's due this $12 million bonus, and then let Gabbert take this team into the future. He's 5 years into his career, still has a long career if he stays healthy, and he's playing well. So I think at this point the writing's on the wall for Kaepernick.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I see it too. It's one of those areas where it's like, boy, I wish in a perfect world, something could happen where either he revitalizes his career with the Niners or he does enough where the Niners could get something for him, but I'm just not sure how realistic that's going to be. So you're probably right. They're probably going to end up releasing him, and then it's really, over the course of the last 4 weeks and then the last 4 weeks coming up here, is really going to tell us what they've got going forward with Blaine Gabbert and some of these guys. And then, it looks like it'd be Blaine Gabbert's job to lose. Maybe they bring in a rookie quarterback to compete with him, or maybe a veteran, not sure. But, that's what's exciting about these next 4 games, and especially getting started Sunday with Cleveland. Gabbert's coming off a big win, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do to continue to build on this. So going forward, once the off season does get here, hopefully we'll have a better idea of what they plan on doing, and I'm hoping for a lot of optimism like we were talking about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much more they open up the playbook to Gabbert and allow him to just do more. Because understandably so, there's more in their playbook, but there's reasons why they hadn't put it all in there right now. Because the more they open it up to him, they're going to see whether he can actually accomplish, the things that the system says that he should be able to do. So I think it's going to be predicated on how they do it. Now, if they do it systematically and let one thing build upon the other, to where he's taking something that he's already learned and adding something else to it, then, I think he'll be fine. He's a smart, intelligent, quarterback, and I think, as always, defensive coordinators catch up with players and they catch up with systems. But if you build a system and the playbook to the players' skills, then, it's just a chess match at that point. And it's not like you're taking a complete system away from a quarterback based on his skills. I think he's going to be able to continue playing well, and I think he's going to be successful. I really do.
I do too. I hope that the things that we've seen in the last few weeks, and obviously what we're probably going to see going forward, is not some kind of a mirage. Like you, I believe he's very athletic. I think he's got all the right tools. He's a very intelligent guy, and I really hope that they can build around him. And I would be I'm at this point, I'm comfortable going into the next season with Blaine Gabbert under center.
I think the players, I think the coaches feel that confidence. You could see it in the way that they're performing. You could feel it, around, 49er Empire. So, part of me feels saddened for Kaepernick. But unfortunately, the way things unraveled, he's a less valuable player now than he was, over the, from 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. So it happens. Players, usually can rekindle their career elsewhere. It's more apt they do it elsewhere than with the team that they are previously with. So from that perspective, I surely wish Cap the best, and I'm not saying that he's gone. I'm just saying that, from a dollars and cents perspective, I just don't see him bringing him back if Gabbert continues playing the way that he's playing.
No doubt. Well, looking forward to the game Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. Hoping for a win, hoping to see continued improvement from some of these young guys. I'd like to see I'm really hoping some of these younger guys and on the front seven can generate a good pass rush. I'd like to see Eric Armstead come up with a sack. He's looking better and better. Eli Harold is a guy I'd like to see step up, outside linebacker, third-round pick. Good-looking player. And, I just want to see continued confidence for these corners. And just going in, this is a game that we should hopefully see just continued improvement and hopefully come out with a win.
And all the players and positions that you mentioned, as far as what you would like to see, that's what coaches are wanting to see in the progression of a system, progression of the players. So that's asking for nothing out of the ordinary. So that's what's expected, and I'm hoping that there's not all of a sudden digression all across the board. I just don't see that happening. I think they're going to continue to improve from a defensive team, from an offensive team, and individually. So I can't wait until we go a few more games and see if we're talking the same thing that we've talked in the last 2 out of 4 games. So if the 49ers can win this game against Cleveland, which they should, and then when I say that they have the potential to win at least 75-80% of the rest of their games. So they just need to keep improving and minimizing mistakes. And winning always goes back to this. Offensively, have good plays on first down, so you in manageable second and third down plays. Convert on third down, and when you're in the red zone, score touchdowns. Because you score, I've seen it too many times this year. You score kick field goals in the red zone, and you end up losing the ball game. So when you get the opportunity, put yourself in good position on second down and convert on third down and score in that red zone, and you have a chance to win. And defensively is simple. You know what? Make plays when the plays are presented, get to the quarterback. If you can't sack him, pressure him. Get him out of the pocket, So if that happens, the 49ers will be successful.
Completely agree. Well, we've reached the end of our show for this week. We're going to look to get right back at it next week, review the Cleveland Browns game and preview. I believe they're playing the Cincinnati Bengals after that. That would be, it's one of those games where all the pressure's on Cincinnati. The Niners are loose, really don't have much to lose. And it's a game where they could kind of be a spoiler. So we'll see what happens this week, and we'll preview next week. So looking forward to it. So on behalf of Dexter Carter, I'm Matt Andruscavage, and you've been listening to the 49ers edition of The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.